I think about, man, I have to perform songs every single night or every other night. Everyone knows Bruno Mars, the performer, but nobody knew the real Bruno, the kid who performed 1,000 shows before age 10, the teenager who slept in abandoned zoos, the man who lost everything to gambling. 39 Bruno decided to tell the whole story, not just about the money he owes, not just about Jessica walking away, but about the childhood trauma that drove him to fame, the addiction that almost killed his career, and the dark family secret he's carried for decades. What he revealed will change everything. Bruno Mars was just 4 years old when most kids were still learning to read. While others played with toys, he was already performing 2 shows a night, 5 days a week. His family had a musical act in Wiki and he became their star. They called him Little Elvis because he wore a tiny glitter jumpsuit and copied Elvis Presley's moves like he was born to do. He was so good that in 1990, at just 5, he stole the spotlight at the Aloha Bowl halftime show in front of 40,000 people. At 6, he appeared on the Arsenio Hall show. Then he had a small role in the movie Honeymoon in Vegas in 1992 and made $600 for one day's work. He joked later that it was his first Vegas residency. Before he even turned 10, he had performed nearly 1,000 shows. That kind of start builds something deep inside. Maybe that's why years later, when he was rehearsing for the Super Bowl halftime show, he said it felt like recess. But life didn't stay that shiny for long. When Bruno was 12, his parents divorced and the family act ended. Suddenly there was no stage, no lights, and no money. Bruno, his dad, and his brother slept wherever they could. Sometimes in a yellow 93 Cadillac, sometimes on rooftops in Wiki, and even once in an abandoned bird zoo where peacocks screamed all night. They didn't have a real bathroom, so they'd sneak into hotel pools just to take a shower. Dinner was often just Spam musubi from 7-Eleven. For 5 months they had no electricity. He practiced guitar by moonlight because they couldn't afford amps. At school, kids teased him for wearing thrift store clothes, but Bruno kept pushing. He earned $75 a night impersonating Michael Jackson so he could pay for demo tapes and bus fare. That struggle made him tough. In 2003, music labels heard his demo and said he should be the next Ricky Martin. They wanted him to sing in Spanish. Even though he didn't write in Spanish, he didn't want that. He didn't want to be label's idea of a Latin artist. So he picked a name that came from childhood. Bruno. It was after a big wrestler named Bruno Sammartino. And he added Mars. Why? Because a girl once told him he was so confident, you must be from Mars. When he moved to Los Angeles in June 2003, he was 18. He stepped off the plane with only $600, 3 demo CDs, and the name Bruno Mars written on his luggage tag. In his first year, he went through 4 places to live, including a $40 a night motel on Sunset and a cramped Koreatown studio shared with 6 other guys. To survive, he lied his way into a DJ job on Van New York Boulevard, even though he had never touched DJ equipment. He got fired after 2 nights, but the $75 he made helped him keep his phone from getting shut off. That summer there were weeks when he ate nothing but 99-cent tacos from Jack in the Box. In February 2004, Madon offered him a deal. It was only 3 pages long. Bruno joked that he'd seen breakfast menus thicker than that. The label didn't know what to do with him. They wanted a Latin pop singer. 9 months later they dropped him without releasing a single song. It was humiliating. He had already told his family back home that he got signed, but that failure turned out to be lucky. Another artist dropped by Madon at the same time was Philip Lawrence. The two became friends. They promised each other they would make music that record labels couldn't ignore. By 2006, Bruno and Philip were broke but driven. They wrote Music in the back of Philip's beat-up 99 Toyota Corolla parked outside a small studio in Hollywood. Ari Levine ran the studio. He had gear. Bruno and Philip had ideas. They'd buy him burritos from 7-Eleven as payment. Whenever a chord or beat felt good, they'd shout, "That's a SME." That became their name, the Smezingtons. They worked 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, analyzing hit songs and learning how to write their own. They studied more than 1,000 songs before even releasing one. Then Bruno's sister, Hay, stepped in. She was working in fashion in West Hollywood and slipped one of his demo CDs to a guy named Mike Lynn. Mike worked for Dr. Dre. First, he almost tossed the CD because the voice sounded weird like a chipmunk. But at 43 seconds in, Bruno hit a high note that made Mike stop and rewind. He flew Bruno out for a meeting at Record One Studios. They didn't offer a deal, but the fact that someone important had noticed gave Bruno a real boost. And being seen by the right person can change everything. To survive, they sold a song they had written for themselves, called Lost to Menudo, for $20,000. Was just enough to avoid getting kicked out of their place. But their big break came when they wrote the chorus for Florida's Right Round. The song hit #1 and sold 636,000 downloads in its first week. That was a digital record at the time. Then they wrote Bobo's Nothing on You, and it was another hit. By the time Bruno released Just the Way You Are in 2010, songs he helped create had already sold more than 15 million downloads for other people. Bruno Mars didn't explode onto the scene overnight. His solo journey began with a Blink and You Miss It EP called It's Better If You Don't Understand. Dropped on May 11, 2010 with barely any attention, just 13 minutes long, only 4 songs, and by the end of 2011 it had sold just 27,000 copies in the US. It looks small, forgettable even, but hidden in that short EP were songs that would become the backbone of something much bigger. Just 5 months later he released Doo Waps and Hooligans on October 2010.